Okay, we're going to take a shot at this. We're going to take a shot at Mystery Maverick's video. You can see her at Mystery Maverick. She has 309 subscribers. This is from Dying for Justice, the wrongful conviction of Darlie Routier, episode 4, part 1. It's just, I've only been, I said, well, let me go over there and look, since she's claiming that I don't want to dispute her. So let me go over there and look. And I was only in for about 5 minutes, and I found two, not even 5 minutes, and I found two different things that I could rebut so far. And one of the things that Mr. Maverick always says about me is he can't even get his own content. He has to use other people's stuff because he's not talented. Well, this clip that she used is from one of the shows. I think it's from The Last Defense. It's from one of the shows, and that's not her content. That's not even Tom Bevel sitting there. That's not your content, Mr. Maverick, is it? Or is that someone else's content? And then you put up the trial transcripts, which is not your content, is it? That's Sandra Halsey and Simmons' content, is it not? It's not yours, is it? You got that from somewhere else, didn't you? Okay, she makes this one little point right here.
Clean front to back stabbing motion. How do you get an angled stab wound from a straight-on stab? This was a criticism of blood spatter analysis later mentioned by Dr. DeMayo.
We know that Dr. Vince DeMayo he was the medical examiner for San Antonio, or Bexar County. He, I can't stress enough that he actually had to, at the end of his testimony, he had to admit that the best people to determine the wounds on Darlie Routier were the people that actually worked on her. Okay? Now, what she says here is about the stabbing motion. That it was a straight, it shows Tom Bevel bringing his hand back. In my opinion, you don't have to bring your hand back that far to accomplish that stab. I've said that many times. I've said that a lot before, because Labor and Epstein didn't do it that way. In my opinion, Tom Bevel went he went way too far back. This doesn't make sense to go way back like that to me. That doesn't mean that that cast off didn't belong on the back of Darlie's nightshirt. Could have been a different way. It just didn't belong there. Now, if you grab a knife or grab something in your hand, the determination of how that stab wound is going to be is not from the motion up or down. It's from the pivot in your wrist. Now you could have that. You can try it. Try it. Put something in your hand. Try it. The pivot in your wrist or impact. When you have impact, it can move it to the side, even if you're making that same motion that Tom Bevel just made. So how do you get that? She says. Logic, physics. It does not have to be a straight downward stab wound. It doesn't have to be just because they're doing that. It's not. It doesn't have to. It's more likely that your hand is going to pivot on impact or on the way down. And if you watch that again, let me do it again. If you watch this again slowly, let me try and do it a little bit slower. You can see that his not hand is slightly curved when he does this.
Shows him reenacting.
You try and yeah, you don't have to swing back that far. You really don't. And some of the wounds, but at the same time, when they say that one of the boys' body was impaled, that means to go through. Doesn't mean to go through and through. It means to go through the body. Those wounds were pretty savage. So maybe she did one time. I just can't see her doing it this way. Let's take a look at his hand. Let me see if I can stop it.
in a stab.
See how his hand's got a slight curve there? I mean, you can't see it that well, but it's slightly curved inward towards his chest. The knife is, and it also depends on what way you have the knife held in your hand. You don't necessarily have to hold it by the way that the handle shows you, but see how he's got it slightly curved? If your hand moves, if your wrist moves a centimeter or two either side, you're going to have that curve. If anybody disagrees with me, please let me know. I want to see if I can slow this down really well. Let's try.
Stabbing motions create blood patterns.
See, if you can see from the bottom the way his hand is held, that knife is actually curved in his hand. It's actually turned.
On the
Right there behind the 9, it is turned.
shot. He's
Right there. If you see that, his thumb is closer to his chest. That knife is actually turned. It's turned. You can still see it as he goes up.
suggested that
That it's turned. It is curved inward. If anybody disagrees, because Devin's wound was in at a slight angle in his chest. That's what she's talking about. It was at a slight angle.
to achieve the blood patterns on
Now, Mystery Maverick goes on to speak a little bit about Larry Byford's testimony. Larry Byford was one of the paramedics that worked on Darlie when they got her inside of the ambulance. He was one of the ones that rode with her. And I want you to listen to how she tries to. You got to listen to her closely. Because if you don't listen to Mystery Maverick closely, you might think that she's very, very incredibly smart about this case. You have to listen to her closely. Let's go on. She's going to talk about where Darren said that Darlie was helping him hold the chest wound together, even though the paramedics and the police officers that walked in while Darren was working on Devin, they both said that Darlie was standing at the end. They said that she was just standing at the end of the bar where the knife was. That she was standing there for a while, and then Waddell told her to sit down, and she sat down. These paramedics, Colby said it. They all said it. Colby came in and worked on Damon and rushed Damon out. He said she was sitting there. Waddell said she was sitting there. Darren said that he had to run across the street to get Karen because he needed help. And if you listen to the way that Darlie answered the question on the 911 call, and it is Doris Trammell. I made a mistake. There was a supporter that came in and said her name was Janice Brooks. No, you're wrong. And I thought you were right. The 911 operator's name was Doris Trammell. I had it right the first time. I seen it said somewhere else that it was Janice Brooks, and this person said that they had their anonymity, said that they had Janice Brooks's contact information. You're wrong. And I was agreeing with you a little bit because I had seen it written somewhere else, but no, her name was Doris Trammell. Period. Okay, in this, she's going to talk about Larry Byford's testimony and what Darlie was saying to him in the ambulance as she was going to the hospital. There's sometimes when Darren says that, I believe in Jamie Johnson, when he spoke with Jamie Johnson, he didn't mention Darlie helping him. Now, when Doris Trammell took the call, she said, "Is there anybody else in the house with you?" And Darlie said, "No, just my husband. He's helping me." She wanted to make it seem like she was already down helping the boys when she wasn't. He's helping me. See that whole the Peter Hyatt did that whole uh, analysis on the way she was saying, and the whole time that he was speaking, that she was speaking through that 5 minutes, she was establishing her alibi right away. I was sleeping. Me and my boys were sleeping. Who would do this? Who would do this? Why would they do this? We got to find out who did this. He left his knife. He's helping me. She was more concerned with who did it and to get that blame off of her than she was in stopping the bleeding in her children. I'm more inclined to believe the testimony of the paramedics and the first responders that went in there that said she stood or sat right there the entire time and that she would not help her boys. And some supporters, they come back and they say, well, she was in shock. Okay, because some of them just justify her not helping because she was in shock. Darren wasn't in shock. Darren's immediate thought was to help his kids. His motherly instinct kicked in. He walked into that scene just like she did. He wasn't injured, but he walked into it just like she did. So let's listen.
Stabbing in a clean front to back stabbing motion. How do you get an angled stab wound from a straight on stab? This was a criticism of blood spatter analysis later mentioned by Dr. DeMayo, that it does not consider the different types of wounds, the difference between individual people and circumstances of events. Darren stated he was blown into Devon's chest and blood had sprayed out. He said that while he was doing this, Darlie had brought a towel over to Devon and was trying to hold his wounds close. Well,
Now, Darren claimed here, let me see. I want to see if she puts the testimony up first.
where was she when you were blowing into his mouth? Right over the
Okay, where was she when you were blowing into his mouth right over top of him? What was she doing? She was trying to stop the bleeding. She was trying to hold his chest together. Okay, I don't believe that Darlie was trying to hold his chest together. I don't believe that. Okay? Because I believe that Darren wanted to make it seem as if she was trying to help because she wasn't. If Darren felt that Damon was already gone and he focused his attention, he said he focused on his attention on the child that had a more of a chance. He said he went over to Darren and felt his, checked his, or he couldn't feel a pulse on Damon. But he said that he felt like he would go for the child that had more of a chance. Uh, so if he's working on Devin, he's saying he was trying to hold his chest together. Then he's saying that she tried to hold his chest together. But the whole time he was working on Devin, right? Waddell was there. Waddell did not see her go over. Walling did not see her go over. Colby did not see her. Colby said that he was working on Devin. Then they both went behind the couch. Darren, went behind the couch near the sliding glass doors, and then they say that Darlie went over there with him, and they were talking for a minute, and that Darren just slid down the wall, and he was done. But here's my point. She was trying to stop the bleeding. She was trying to hold his chest together. But listen to what Mr. Maverick says here.
The top of him. What was she doing? She was trying to stop the bleeding. She was trying to hold his chest together. Many have speculated that this was a lie made up by Darren prior to trial to cover for Darlie.
He said something totally different to Jamie Johnson, and he was questioned by that by Greg Davis, who absolutely tore his ass up on cross examination. He had to make it seem like Darlie was trying to help because it looked bad that she wasn't.
However, according
Your picture? Is that your picture, Mystery Maverick, or did you get that from somewhere else? You using somebody else's content? Did you take that picture of Darren? You're using somebody else's content, ain't you?
to Larry Byford, the EMT that rode with Darlie to the hospital, he recalled Darlie telling him she had given CPR to one of the boys.
Look at the testimony.
You've told us about the defendant's comments about when are we going to get to the hospital. Do you recall her making any other statements, or was she relatively quiet on the way down there? She had remarked once about doing CPR on one of the boys.
She had remarked once about doing CPR on one of the boys. All right. Now, holding the wound together, he said she was helping hold the wound together. Darren said it. Darren did not say that she was helping give CPR. Holding the wound together, if it was true that she did that, is not giving CPR. She lied to Byford, is what she did. Because giving CPR goes like this. I had looked for the best analysis of how to give it. And Darren had 7 years of CPR experience. Darren even mentioned tilting Devin's head back. Okay? Check the scene for safety. Form an initial impression and use the protective equipment, PPE, which they didn't have time for that. Protective equipment. If the person appears unresponsive, check for responsive breathing, life-threatening, or other life-threatening conditions using shout to tap. Shout, tap, shout. Well, Darren smacked him in the face. Darren did do something like that. If the person does not respond and is not breathing or only gasping, call 911, get equipment, or tell someone to do so. I was going to Karen's house. She's a nurse. I needed someone to help me. He claims that Darlie was already on the phone, right? He claims that Darlie was already on the phone. So she's on the phone, holding a towel to her own neck, holding the chest wound together, and performing CPR, right? Again, Darlie the octopus. Kneel beside the person. Place the person on their back on a firm, flat surface. Okay, Devin was already on his back. 2 hands centered on the chest. Shoulders directly over hands, elbows lock. At least 2 inches for compression. 100 to 120 per minute. Allow chest to return to normal position after each compression. Give 2 breaths. Open the airway to a past neutral position using the head tilt chin lift technique. Pinch the nose shut, take a normal breath, and make a complete seal over the person's mouth with your mouth. Ensure that each breath lasts 1 second and makes the chest rise. Allow air to exit before giving the next breath. Now, if she was helping him give CPR, which one of those was she doing? Because she would just be in the way if Darren was trying. It doesn't take 2 people to give CPR. You'd just be in the way. It needs to be one person. One person. This is my opinion. Is she wrong? Is that footage your content? Is that your content right there, Mystery Maverick? He always uses someone else's content because he's not talented. Are you using this because you're not talented? Was that you filming them? But anyways, I really do not believe that Darlie was helping at all. I'm inclined to believe the several different people that went in there that said that she was not, she was stood by that bar, and that's it. I believe them, who are mediums to the situation. They had no reason to lie. Tell me what you think. Holding the chest wound together, if she did that, would not be doing CPR. It would not be. Then she goes on to say, after this, she goes on to say Darlie and Darren had no idea that she was a suspect. I think they did have an idea. I think they had an idea that she was a suspect as soon as they removed that fucking sink out of there. Because they didn't mention the towels. When the responders went in, they said it. Even she said, I put a towel on his back. That's not helping. That's actually covering up what you did if she did that. But none of the first responders saw a towel on his back. And even if, because there's a point where it says he lifted up his shirt, even if she put a towel on his back, she just put a towel on his back, that's not helping. And a wet towel's not helping at all. The wet towels would show you that Darlie had no idea how to do CPR. So how could she be helping him? She had no idea how to do it. What was she doing? Was she doing the chest compressions? Was she holding his nose? Was she tilting his head back? Was she doing the breathing? Because she didn't know how to do CPR. Darren had 7 years of it, says on the show. Now let's think about that.